want to talk to you today about 5 points of contact. It's a kind of a strange topic. I get assigned my topics. So Ed Lewis wrote me a topic. He said, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, Shintoism, 45 minutes, tell them how they can reach him. Really, seriously. And I thought, and I'll explain God on the side, you know, in my extra minutes, okay? Here's what I want to do. It's kind of a little bit weird, but that sort of matches. I want to know, what does chess have to do with yoga and Property Brothers on HGTV and world religions? If you want to hang in for that, it's well worth hearing. The second thing I want to talk about is a basic thumbnail sketch of the world's largest religions. I am not able to take time to explain each one of them to you, but I'm going to tell you about some of your neighbors that are moving in next door. Some of them look weird, and their practices are even weirder. And if you're going to reach them, you might want to know how do you do that. So we're going to take a look at that. I also want to end up with 5 points of contact. What do I do when I'm sitting in the house of someone whose belief system is so foreign to me, I don't even understand the artwork? I don't understand why there's a person with an elephant's head. I like their food, but don't understand the restaurant. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's what we're here to talk about. So the first thing I want to do, even before I get into that, is I want to ask the question, why am I looking at my window, in the window of my neighbor's house and trying to figure out what they believe? Well, the first reason is probably curiosity. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the deeper you grow in your faith, the more curious you become about how did everybody else answer this question about the deep and meaningful aspirations of life. How does everybody else look at this? And I think it's a basic curiosity, but you don't really have time to read a big book on religions, and frankly, you don't go to sleep if you do. So maybe we could just do a light kind of skip a stone across the top of the pond and mention a few and explain a few things about them that might give you a few touch points. The second reason beyond curiosity, I think, is your call. I mean, if I'm called to reach people, men and women, you will never, ever, ever win an enemy to Jesus. You will only win a friend. And you can't make them a friend as long as you think they're so weird you can't talk to them. So you have to find a bridge across. Can I just remind you, lost people don't have to reach you. They just have to be lost. You have to reach them. You're the person in the helicopter flying over the mountain looking for the guy who's lost on the side of the mountain who doesn't even realize how perilous his situation is. You're the one who's called to rescue them. So they're not going to know that they need rescue. So please don't come charging in like, I have the answer to a happy and meaningful life, and I know you've been waiting for me. Because they're looking at you like, no, not so much. So one of the things we want to do is we want to understand our call. There are 6 important non-Christian religions in the world that make up most of the world's surface. They are Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, and Shinto and Islam. I could include Judaism and Christianity, but you have more background in those, and so you probably need less things said about them. Here's a curious fact. About 1/3 of the world's population identifies Jesus Christ as the center of their religion. It's Christian in some way. Some of them are truly surrendered to Jesus Christ. Many are not. You all know that. About 1/5 of the world's population says Allah is their God, or are Muslims. That means if you put all the Christians and Muslims together, that's half the world's population. So, interestingly enough, you might be a little bit surprised at this. There's another fact that I found surprising. Even though you go into colleges and universities and you hear something different, I'm telling you the statistics are there. Here's a surprise. There's a relatively small number of atheists on the planet. They equal less than 2% of the entire population. And atheists and agnostics, though they seem to dominate universities in the West right now in professorships, only equal altogether on the planet 14% atheist and agnostic in the world, and that number is shrinking. Listen to me very carefully. Peter Berger, the distinguished sociologist at Boston University, and a proponent of the secular thesis that said secularism is going to, take off the pants of religion and it's going to take over the world, has said these words: we were wrong. The world is becoming more religious, not more secular. Now, the Western world academics are becoming more secular, but they don't represent the whole world. In fact, the further we go, the more the climate is difficult, the earth is difficult, the terrorism is difficult, the further people go toward religion, not away from it. Only secularists are running around saying on their various news stations, well, you can see that religion is the problem. Saying religion is the problem is like blaming mathematics because I can't balance a checkbook. Okay, that's just dumb. Now, honestly, it's all about the view. Every person you know, every person, including the person sitting next to you, has a worldview. It's the way we answer big questions. So, we ask questions like, well, Mommy, where did we come from? Are we the byproduct of an evolutionary process? Were we created by a personal God? And then, how about this one? Why are we here? Rick Warren wrote a book about 15 years ago called The Purpose-Driven Life. It was a New York Times bestseller among non-Christians. Non-Christians who are going, hey, there's a guy who thinks he knows what we're here for. And I want to know what we're here for because I've been sitting here at Taco Bell for an hour and I don't know what I'm here for. There's another one. How about what happens to us when we die? See, at the end of everybody's life, there's the same 6-foot hole. So what am I going to do about that? What happens to me 1 minute after I'm not here? Am I anywhere? And so they start answering these questions, and some of them say, well, you know, I'm here, and then I get a second chance at being here, and maybe I'm a bug, or maybe I'm a cow, or if I'm really, you know, unlucky, I'm a Volkswagen. I don't know, something like that. Now, what I want you to understand is that life comes down really to something very simple. Either everything came from somebody or it didn't. It's not fundamentally that difficult. Either someone planned everything that you see, or nothing came from something, and organization came from chaos. Out of nothing and chaos came organization. That's basically the line of the professional university professors across America. Nothing started something and then got it organized. Now, the problem with that idea is it's stupid. But beyond that, sooner or later, everybody forms an answer to their question. And how you end up, do those questions actually affect you? Does it matter to you if your neighbor, let's say, is a Hindu? Well, let me ask you this. If the ER doctor at your hospital, and by the way, I don't know about your hospitals, but in Florida, you can't even pronounce the names of the doctors. Seriously, they all come from some Asian country, and the name is like 14 syllables long. So they just say, call me Leo, you know, because you don't know what he is. And here's the thing. If that guy is a reincarnationist, and you get in a horrible motorcycle accident, look, all you did was come here this morning and I've got you in a horrible accident already. If you get in a horrible motorcycle accident, you are all like mangled. Can you picture that? You're all like mangled. And how hard do you think this guy's going to work at saving your life on an ER table if he believes in reincarnation? You don't think this matters to you? This matters to you. What your neighbor believes really does affect you. Did you ever rake your lawn? You did a really good job because your mom said, yeah, I can rake the lawn. And you raked the lawn. And your neighbor didn't, and the wind blew. We live in a community, and that means the leaves of my neighbor's sin blow on my well-manicured life. It's the way it is. So, here's the problem. If I'm going to figure out what worldview I want to adopt, I need to look for clues. Any detective trying to support his case looks for fingerprints or clues. And here's what you come up with. There's basically only 4 answers to the question of how everything got here, and how everything is posed and what it's all for. Atheism says the universe was always here. Why? Because if nothing created it, nothing was created, it just was here. So there's this universalism, there's no God, there's no miracles, there's no purpose. You are a happy random sequence of atoms. You are about the value of a mutated virus. You and mucus have something in common. Okay? Your life is purposeless. This is the official line of the state governments across America. You are nothing. You are a random sequence. And to be honest with you, that is the reason why many of them will fight unbelievably to save the whales but not the unborn children, because it's all like one thing and it's whatever makes you happy and whatever gets you through the night. You're like a strain of a virus. Now there's another one and it says, wait a minute, that's not true. Look around. There had to be something or someone that created this. Deism is the idea that there was a creator of the universe who made everything and then went and found a hammock and went on vacation. Basically, deism is he started it and now he's laying there letting it go, spun the wheel, everybody play the game, and I'll just sit here and watch it happen. Jefferson was a deist. There were some early founders of our country that were deists. The vast majority were Christians. But theism posited that, yes, there was a creator, but that's really all we can say. Now, the modern term for deism for a lot of people is, in the university is agnosticism. It means there's probably a God that I can't possibly know, and therefore I just walk around going, you really can't know anything. Therefore, they charge you $50,000 a year to go to the educational process in which you can't know anything, okay? Which makes sense to somebody, not me. Pantheism is the idea that there's a, get a little theme going here. There's a God force. Think Star Wars. The force is out there connecting everything together. And I want you to start, humming a Pocahontas theme here. Because it's all woven together. And then if you really bring it up, break out in a circle of life for Lion King, and you got your pantheism. It's basically the idea that there's something connecting everything and it's all God. Like a spider web, where the spider can feel a movement in the force. There's a disturbance in the force. And that's pantheism. And basically, movies have been desperately trying to teach us alternative thoughts to the last one, which is theism, which is what our founders and our government was actually founded on. The idea that your rights don't come from government, but they are inalienable rights given to you by your creator, who, by the way, was involved. So, theism is the idea that there's an engaged and a personal God, and he's involved, he created everything, he wants you to know him, and therefore he speaks or he writes. He's involved, he's a communicative God. Now, we are theists of one sort. We're not the only theists on the planet. We're not even, if you put all the others together, they're bigger than us. Theists believe that there's something that comes across that is, this is the Word of God. But if I stand in front of a convention of Hindus and say, this is the Word of God, they got a different book than I do. So theism just means you have a God that's engaged that is actually speaking in your reading. Now, I got an idea. I had this idea for about 15 years and I can't find anybody to pick up on it. If faith is something you find through the clues, I want you to go with me in just an idea. I don't even know if this idea would work. I need a writer. If one of you is a great writer, I don't have the capability to do this. But as a student of world history, years ago, I started to explore a theme, and I decided that religions sort of look like heavenly chess. Now, go with me for a minute, because I'm a little bit weird, and, that's just self-evident. But the point is that I have a connecting thought here. I followed the dates of the rise of a variety of religions. See if you can make sense of this. Go all the way back to the beginning, and in our story, where does the earliest part of our story come from? The Bible doesn't begin with creation. It begins with Moses, who God backdates the story to creation, but Moses is writing out the first chapter. So between the time of Abraham and Moses, God, the one true majestic God of the universe, is revealing himself through his word, and it comes through 5 books that we call the Torah. Contemporary to the Torah, let's take God, and he moves forward his chess piece. Now he's white because he goes first. So he moves his chess piece forward. The enemy's sitting on the other side of the table. So what does he do? At the same time, he launches a barrage of Hinduism with 330 million Hindu gods. Same dates. God advances the Torah. Fine. Here's 330 million Hindu gods. And over in the basin east of the Indus River, Hinduism gets whipped up at the same time. Now, fast forward this to, who's the probably most popular, well-known king of Israel in the Old Testament? David. So David writes all these psalms, right? 73, we think of 150 psalms are David's. And we have the Proverbs written by Solomon, and they begin to be collected by a school of prophets that for a while Eliyahu or Elijah is in charge of. And during this time, you have the beginnings of the Word of God and the earliest pieces of the organization of what we would call the middle section of the Old Testament. So the Torah's already out, but we got the midsection being written and distributed. Right as that comes forward, with the rising sun of Japan, Shintoism comes out at the same time and puts forward its chess piece of this idea of animist gods. And in Greece, on the other side of Israel, about, well, not equidistant, but a little bit closer over in Greece, pantheist, Etruscan, and Greek gods go forward. Now, why is that important to you? The foundation of everything that we talk about in modernity comes from antiquity. If the Bible is your mother, Homer is your father. You have many things that are laced into the... What's today? No. What day of the week is it? Thursday comes from where?
Thor.
The god Thor, right? July comes from the Roman world, from the Julian clan. Everything about what you do on a daily basis, you're standing on the shoulders of people who went before you. Occasionally I run into Christians who go, I can't have a Christmas tree because I can't have it. Comes from something pagan. So do sandwiches. The old sandwich wouldn't stop gambling, so he said, put the meat inside the bread so I can gamble with this hand, throw away a fortune, and eat with that hand. I eat sandwiches without guilt. Just because it came from something bad doesn't mean it is something bad. The fact of the matter is, if I'm going to live in purity, then I can't tell you the days of the week, the months of the year. I have to have my own calendar, our own Christian calendar, where we all talk in special code and have our own handshake. I mean, really? You don't think we're weird enough? So here's the bottom line. Go forward with me. About the time the Hebrew Scriptures is finishing, Ezra is the guy. They're coming back from Babylon. The end parts of the Hebrew Scriptures are being put together. Just at that time, if you were to look very closely, you would find that in the different parts of the world, the enemy is making multiple moves. In Athens, 500 BC, in Periclean Athens, you have Sophocles or Sophocles. You have the Euripidean poems. You have Plato. You have Aristotle. In the classical period from 500 to 300 BC, you have all of what is taught in our universities as the foundation of truth is being formed in Athens and in Rome. Why? Because the Bible's coming forward, but the other chess pieces are coming forward. At the same time, 500 BC, rising out of the east is Confucius. And Confucius say, I take China. And Buddha, Gautama, discovers himself to be the enlightened one. Sits under a tree, tries to do nothing, which is what I call a vacation, but he was trying to actually get enlightened and start a religion. And so all of these are starting just as the Hebrew Scriptures are closed. I noticed that every time God put forward a big agenda for the Bible, the enemy put forward a big agenda for other gods. And the dates line up. Now, fast forward to the Roman world. Jesus came. Jesus died. Jesus was raised. Christianity starts to take off. It's the years 100, 200, 300, 400, and Christianity really begins to grow. Now there are Bible schools. Now people have full copies of the New Testament for the first time in the 400s. And then the first actual learning and instruction schools are begun in the 500s and 600s, and rising out of the desert is Muhammad having revelations and the Quran. And all I'm looking for is somebody who can write the story of the heavenly chess game. Because I think what's interesting is when God gives us revelation, the enemy counters with nonsense. Now, just so you know, I didn't make this up, 2 Corinthians 4 says this, and even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing, in whose case the God of this world, listen, has blinded the minds of the unbelieving so that they may not see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For we do not preach ourselves, listen, we do not preach ourselves, but Christ Jesus our Messiah, And, look at the second half of what we preach, and we are his bondservants. The whole theme this week, the whole thing you're learning about, Paul said was integral to what we teach. Jesus is Lord and I am not. He is master and I'm not in charge. When I said I come to Jesus, it wasn't just to have a happy and meaningful life. It was to surrender. And Satan blinded their minds by a series of deceptive cults and religions that piled over. All right. One of the things we want to do is we want to learn about our world. You know, you can't understand the world today without understanding religions. The other day, a priest went in to have Mass in Normandy, and two guys came in and beheaded him during Mass in front of the congregation. You don't think this is coming to a village near you? I was in Lebanon when it fell apart. It was a government while I was there. I was in the news broadcasting for, at that time, CBS, and here's what happened. The government died. It was over. And all of a sudden, the currency didn't mean anything, and all of a sudden, there was nothing left for people to go and buy. Shelves were empty, government collapsed, there was nothing left. I've been in South Africa when they were on the gold standard and been back a year later when their currency was worthless. You don't think this can happen overnight? We walk around believing we live in an organized world, but we live in a world where you can go to Mass and watch your priest beheaded. That's the real world we live in. Now, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to tell you the truth. So here's the point. For years, I have been part of a government that thinks you can understand the world without understanding its religion. You can't. All the way back as far as Jimmy Carter, he thought the Shah of Iran wasn't going to fall because the CIA said it's not that important to study their religion. Their religion is the heartbeat of everything that's going on. And increasingly you are watching the discomfort of secularists on the news having to talk about religious life because it's the only way that explains what happened in the news, and they don't happen to be religious. So they don't know what to do. You're not going to understand India and its nationalist parties without understanding Hinduism. You're not going to understand East Asia's economic strength if you don't get the idea of Confucianism. You're not going to really grab what's going on in much of the world. Look, when I'm talking to my neighbor, let's say I go over and I want to share the gospel with my neighbor, and he happens to be a Buddhist or a Hindu. Both of them believe in a God of grace. If I start telling him about how I'm lost in sin, he doesn't register that. He looks at me like, what's wrong with your God that he doesn't just forgive you? Because their God forgives them at no cost to the God. Our God forgives us because Jesus died for us. But the whole notion that sin is so bad that it created a gulf between us and God doesn't exist in their theology. So you're going to try to explain the gospel to them, but they didn't feel lost. You'll never get a guy saved until you get him lost. So Christians can also find ways to deal with community issues. Right now we have this weird thing going on because the United Nations Conference on Population and Development wants to desperately spread the good news of abortion to all the land. It's funded 98% by the U.S. government. Because we feel that global warming and killing unborn are our two biggest agendas that we need to put out there in the world. I'm just telling you, by the dollars, that's what we're saying. What's interesting is our allies at the UN are Muslims. The other allies are Catholics. Why? Because we all agree on that. So if you want to know who can play well in the sandbox to help you with your cause, you're going to have to understand other religions, is what I'm saying. So getting to know my neighbor's religion. How do I do that? Well, there are some selections on the menu today. If you'd like to, choose a religion, here we have some of the ones on the menu. I am not going to do an in-depth look at each of these because we will be here well into the night and tomorrow. But I would like to mention a few things about them. Now, when I start dealing with people, and I travel a lot, I'm often in places where somebody just made an announcement, people are crying, and I don't know what they said. This is like normal. I call that a Tuesday. So, honestly, here's what I can tell you. When I don't know, first time I got up in front of a Buddhist audience, I was terrified. I knew nothing about Buddhists. Here's what I do know. Everybody in the world wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are. Everybody. And if you will serve them and you will love them and you will be authentic and you will care about them, they will respond to you. By the way, jokes help, but you need to contextualize your jokes. Things that are funny to... How many of you watch British TV and you're like, yeah, no, I don't get it. Okay? What's even worse when you take it to Buddhism, okay? Everything dies. Don't tell chicken jokes to reincarnationists. This is something I've learned, okay? Here's what I do. I ask 4 questions. I start off with, what is this religion's ultimate concern? So when I sit down with a buddy and I don't know anything about him, I start saying, here's the words I use, and it always has worked for me. I say, I love to learn about other cultures. And they go, oh, culture, okay. I will answer. And so I ask them about religion, but I talk about culture. In your culture, read religion, what is the ultimate concern? What are people coming to that for? What are people really worried about? What's the underlying concern? The second question I ask is, what is your culture's view of reality? Like, are gods real? What are they like? Can they help us? How about human beings? Are they basically good? Basically bad? What does your culture say about the physical world? Is it real? That sounds funny. Are you really here today? Some of you stayed up so late last night, you really couldn't get that right on the quiz if I asked you right now. Are you really here? Yeah, I got nothing. But here's the thing. I can tell you right now that one of the questions we have, we're trying to be real nonchalant about this, so mingle amongst yourselves for a moment. Okay, there you go. I'm going to just shout and then I'll keep going. No one's ever told me I'm too quiet anyway. Okay, start with Hinduism for a minute. By the way, Hinduism is not a religion. It's a series of religions. In fact, the British coined the term. How many of you know the term New Age? Okay, what does it mean? Yeah, it depends on who you're talking to. Because New Age, you know what it really means? Everything weird. That's what it means, okay? Because people really don't know what it means. So here's the thing. Hinduism is actually an innumerable number of contradictory religions that all sort of rose out of the Indian subcontinent. And some of them are theistic and some of them are not. So it doesn't organize under one thing. Most Hindus probably wouldn't agree with the idea that their religions or stems are contradictory. They would say something like this. They would say, you know, honestly, Hinduism is a journey to progress from maybe thinking you were worshiping a god to understanding that really it doesn't matter because we're all happy, let's sing Kumbaya. And you're going to be sitting there trying to figure out where this is going. And instead of one religion called Hinduism, there are many religions in India that are often contradictory, wildly conflicting in beliefs, and more accurate, a title would be the native religions of India instead of Hinduism. Don't look at a Hindu and think you can read a book on Hinduism and know what he believes. There's so many varieties, it's really hard to do. Address him as a person, not as a Hindu. By the way, do that anyway. Don't talk to me. Honestly, I went into a Starbucks the other day. I'm sitting down with this kid who, you know, he says he's gay. I know this. He knows this. He's involved in a lifestyle of choices. He walks over. He knows I'm a pastor. So he says to me, I guess you got a real beef with me because I'm gay. And I said, no, I got a real beef with you because you don't know how to make a coffee. And so we talked about the coffee. And after we talked about the coffee for a while, I told a few jokes. We had a little bit of a good time. And then he looked at me and he goes, you're a pastor, right? How come you haven't asked me about being gay? I said, well, do you got other stuff you do besides sex? I'm just wondering because I don't really walk around thinking about that all day or talking about that all day. So really, I'm thinking maybe we could talk baseball. The thing is, don't treat people like they're whatever their label is, please. The labels are breaking us up. And then we can't talk to you like you're you. I think the Hindu scriptures tell us that there are 330 million gods, and that by itself is going to have its own difficult curve to actually get on board with what they believe. The two things, though, that I think you can say about Hindus across the board. One of them is they believe in samsara, which is reincarnation. And for the most part, they call this a combination of karma, which is your deeds. And how many of you know the word karma? And they also put it together with karma and rebirth. In other words, there's this impersonal standard of judgment based on the way you acted in this life that determines what happens in the next life. That's something that's kind of common to all Hindus. Pretty much you'll find that they believe that. They also, most of them, earnestly seek for one thing: liberation. Moksha is actually liberation. It's the idea that I can get off the rat race of just becoming something else. I know, when you watch like movie stars and they decide to, dip their toe in this, they say, I can't wait to be reincarnated. But most Hindus have a sucky life, and they're really not looking forward to another one. So honestly, you don't hear them say that, you hear movie stars say that. Of course you want another life. You fly in a private jet, but chances are you're going to end up being a cow or something. An offshoot of Hinduism are the guys that we used to see in the airports, the Hare Krishnas. This is an offshoot. They follow after Krishna, the god of the cosmos. And basically, they would summarize the entire human experience as this: the problem is people are ignorant. Not immoral, ignorant. In other words, we can educate you out into a new light that will change who you are. So in the subcontinents where there is so little education, they hunger for a better education. Typically, whether you're Hindu or Buddhist, you believe that the problem is intellectual. If you're Islamic or you're Christian or you're Jewish, you believe the problem's here. So Buddhism, Hinduism, problems here. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, problems here. One addresses morality, the other one addresses the nature as intellectual. Let me talk for a moment about Judaism. I don't have to say much about it. There are about 15 to 16 million Jews in the world. About half of them live in Israel, about the other half live in New York. Seriously, there are 5 to 6 million in Israel. There are about 6 to 7 million of them in the United States, and there are about 5 million of those that live in New York, or greater New York. There are 1% of the population of Muslims on the planet. There are less than 1% of the population of Christians on the planet, if you compare the two size-wise, but they have inordinate influence. Listen to me very carefully. If somebody asks you the question, why do you believe the Bible is literally true? The answer to the question is Israel. Here is a people that should have been wiped out generations ago. They are a tiny, minuscule part of the planet. But God said He would bless that people, and you will find that more than half of the Nobel Prizes in the hands of Jews when they are only less than 2% of the world's population. How does that happen? Are they just smarter than everybody else? No, not really. And in fact, they've always been overwhelming significance as a small group of people. Let me talk for a moment about Buddhists, because there's 400 million of them, so you should know something about them. They're 6 to 7% of the world's population, and 75 to 80% of Buddhists are Asian. When you look at them, you would look at an Asian and you're more than likely looking at somebody who's from a Buddhist background. They follow a variety of different schools. The ones from Southeast Asia are like the Theravada sect. They have the teachings of Gautama the Buddha from 500 BC. And it's a very, very kind of strict school in its foundation. There's also a school for China and East Asia. There's also Zen Buddhism, which really came up in Japan. And then there's Tibetan Buddhism, and that's the Dalai Lama and the mountains that attach itself to China. The bottom line is, I want you to understand what happened. A guy by the name of Siddhartha Gautama he's a prince. He grows up as a really rich kid. I don't mean a rich kid. I mean a rich kid so rich, he's never heard there's illness. He doesn't know there are poor people anywhere. He's never seen them. His father raises him in such a bubble in Nepal that he never sees death or disease or poor. And then one day he decides to leave the palace and do that little escapee thing. And he runs into an old man. And he's never seen an old man who is sickly and old. He runs into a person who's lying on a bed, who's dying. And suddenly, for the first time, he is confronted with struggles and suffering. And so he goes and decides he's going to try desperately to be enlightened. Usually when you see Buddha, he's fat, happy, and sitting on a statue somewhere. But the fact of the matter is, what Gautama did was he said that life is all about suffering. Basically, his opening line, life sucks. That's what he said. And you know what? He's got millions of followers. Why? Because they think it does. And then he said the suffering is all caused by one thing: desire. Now, think about how brilliant this is. If you don't want anything, you're happy. Well, wait a minute. When I'm hungry, I want something, right? So what's his way of dealing with it? Well, you can eat, but the other way you can do it is sit there and let the desire flow away. I don't want the desire to flow away. I want the steak to flow in. But his idea is, through right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, I can work my way and meditate my way out of desire. And when I don't want anything anymore, then I reach the perfect state. Nirvana means it's all over. In other words, I'm living my life trying not to want anything. What does that mean for an economy when you base an entire economy on don't want stuff? No wonder Walmart doesn't succeed there. Oh, come on, tell me you haven't walked in there, you were going to get one stupid little thing, you came out with a whole cart. There's a whole science to the way we sell you stuff. So it doesn't work for them. By the way, one of the ways it can help you is you can position your body in certain ways to take away various urges and desires. Yoga comes indirectly from this through Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. And then if I go to the East and I go to Confucius, I will come to one of the biggest nation's 3 religions. I want you to know something about the Chinese people that is very different than you. The Chinese people actually follow Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism. But that doesn't mean there are 3 different denominations. It means they take mixtures of all of them. This is what's happening to American Christianity. It used to be Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, and then Susie Presbyterian married Johnny Methodist, and then they decided to go to the Bible church down the street, so they are Mezzo, Prezzo, Bapto, Catho, and you don't know what they are anymore. They have a theology statement that makes no sense, and they really like the following songs. I mean, that's what you know. So here's what I can tell you. Your Chinese friends, most of them, they go to, for mystical experience, they go to Taoism. For morals, they go to the sayings of Confucius. For afterlife, they go to Buddhism. But when they want to arrange the furniture, they go to Feng Shui. Because the energy in the home, this is what it has to do with property brokers. See, they got in here. HGTV is right here. How many of you have seen people get their house redone on HGTV, but they say it has to be Feng Shui. It can't have, you got to move the stairway. You got people spending $100,000 to move the stairway because of the energy in the house. The only energy in the house I'm worried about is the part I'm getting billed for. Okay? Close the refrigerator, because I'm worried about the bill. Now, among the Chinese, besides those who follow Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism, here's what I want you to know. 40 to 55 million Chinese Christians. Can I just tell you something? You want to know where the powerhouse of Christianity is? It's growing in the East, not here. The strongest Christian force in the 21st century, by mid-21st century, will be Mandarin speaking, not English speaking. You think Hillsong's putting out some songs? You ought to hear what the Chinese are doing. And I've had a chance to teach Beijing Bible and teach students, and here's what I can tell you. They are an unstoppable bunch because they were forged out of the fire of trouble. They're not like, how do I have a better life? That's not them. They're tough. Okay, I got to quickly go past this. Confucius was an innovative thinker, and he said, heaven appointed me to teach these things, and so he put together something. He came out, one of his biggest statements is the opposite of what Jesus said. It means exactly the same thing. He said, don't do to others what you don't want done to yourself. Sounds like the reversal of the golden rule, but it means exactly the same thing. Confucianism's ultimate concern is the practice of virtue, and here's what I want you to see. There are many, many Christians. You will find, if you're traveling in China, you will find vibrant Christians there. House churches. Quiet people who know Jesus Christ, who are standing up for him. Listen, if you walk into your high school and you hear a secularist dialogue about how Christianity is slipping off the earth, those people haven't been to China. They don't know what, because the sun might set in the west, but it's rising in the east, my friend. There's a lot going on out there that people don't want to talk about in the news. Let me go past this. I can only mention Taoism. Taoism it tends to believe that we should just get rid of duty and formalize learning, and people would naturally do right. Taoists literally believe people are basically friendly, happy, and nice. They're kind of like that, preteen girl that's in the movie. I hope everyone loves everyone, or the girl at the beauty pageant. I don't know. But anyway, I want world peace. Here's the thing. Taoists are walking around with the idea that if everybody would just settle down, we'd all get along. The problem is things like the Holocaust, Darfur, Stalin's Gulag, and other things that would really put, a fly in the ointment. Shintoism largely develops out of the Japanese culture, and it also believes that man is basically good. And I want to come to Islam, and I just want to say that 1.5 billion people on this planet are Muslims. And they're all over the place. But did you know that the majority of Muslims are not Arab? The largest Muslim country is Indonesia. So there are more Asian Muslims than there are Arab Muslims. We tend to get them mixed up. Islam is one of the fastest growing religions. However, listen to me very carefully because you will not get this on CNN. Christianity isn't that far behind it in the rapidity of our growth. Why is Islam growing? It's growing because they have babies. Lots and lots of babies. Why? Because they don't watch a lot of TV. The point is, I don't know if that's why, but the point is, everybody's talking about how they're going to come to Europe and their numbers will swell. Here's what they don't get. Poor people have more babies. Then they get richer. Then they stop having as many babies. So the arc doesn't go continuous. It starts to level off as riches come to them. So the Muslim family that goes from Syria flat broke has 9 kids. But their kids, when they move to Germany and get a job, will only have 2. Why? Because they got more money and they want to hang on to it. So you have a curving of it. In America, 1/3 of America's Muslims are native-born converts among the African-American community. Some of you know a good bit about this, so I want to get to my last point. It's important to me that you understand that many of you are going to run into atheists. Many of the atheists you run into aren't really atheists. They're just other kids with Google, and they think they know stuff because they have a good phone. Let me give you a couple of basic arguments that we use for God's existence that work very well. I'll just give them to you. First, in order for atheism to be true, the universe can't have a beginning. There's a law of causality that says everything that has a beginning has to have a beginner. You can't start something unless you start it. Well, why can't nothing start something? Because nothing is nothing, and therefore it can't do anything. So the law of causality is, if you got a beginning, you got a beginner. Einstein said the world had a beginning. Hubble said the world had a beginning. The expansion of the universe says the world had a beginning. The universe had a beginning according to science. I'm not talking Christianity, I'm talking science. Science says it had a beginning, therefore it has to have a beginner. The second thing I would tell you is the universe is incredibly well designed. Are you aware of the design of Perfect for Life? The universe had expanded, and when it blew up and expanded, if it expanded too fast, it would never have formed planets. If it expanded too slow, those planets would have imploded. If there's no planets, there's no Earth. If there's no Earth, there's no life. You're not here. Let's go home. By the way, the laws of the universe are perfectly suited for life on this planet. We have just enough gravity to not be crushed. I mean, I'm getting a little more gravity as I get a little older, but the point is, it's perfect for us. We're not floating off in space and we're not getting crushed by it. The location of our galaxy is perfectly positioned for life. Of the billions of galaxies out there, ours alone has the perfect formation for a place, a sweet spot, if you will, a distance from the sun that's not too close so we don't all get fried. And it's not too far so that we don't all have to live in igloos. Our sun is perfectly positioned. Our nearby planets like Jupiter help life on Earth to survive. All the way through the scientific data, atheists do not match the data. The question is this: how do I reach people? Let me quickly give you these. First, do it with your eyes. Do it with your eyes. What do I mean? I mean truly respect people. I mean look at them. And everyone cherishes their core beliefs. Don't make fun of somebody else's beliefs because you don't understand them. with your eyes, can you tell when you smile what your eyes do? Do that with your eyes when looking at people. Start off by saying, this person has something to offer in life. They're valuable to God. Jesus died for them. Start with your eyes. Then move to your ears. This is what I do. I ask questions about what they care about. Because here's the bottom line. People walk into a conversation, and what's the subject they most want to talk about? Everybody you run into today, what's the subject they most want to talk about? Themselves. So let them. Here's a thought. When you actually let them talk about themselves, they walk away going, boy, that guy was so caring. I didn't say anything. I asked you about you. But here's the thing. I don't do it as a trick. I do it to figure out who you are. Why? Because it's cool just to know you. Listen, when you get up in the morning and you're heading to your high school, before you get there and you got to go to the lockers and all that stuff, take a deep breath and say, God, the greatest privilege of my life is I get to serve Jesus by serving them. I don't need some great monastery to make me serve you. I'm going to serve Jesus by serving them, and then find somebody to listen to. Everybody's hurting. The third one, with your mouth. How do you do it? Well, first, smile. Smile at people. I smiled at a girl the other day. I was sitting in a restaurant. She was going to bring me something. I was at some little restaurant. I'm by myself. My wife is going off in Virginia. So I looked at her and I said, hey, I'm just going to pray here for a minute. Thank you, God, for my food. Is there anything I can pray for you about? And she starts bawling. And I'm standing there like, okay. My food's getting cold. I need to serve Jesus now. But I like hot food. So I was still, struggling, arguing with Jesus and whatnot. And she was just standing there, I lost my rent and my kids are going to be taken away. And I was like, whoa! And then I stopped and said, God, you just gave me a really neat opportunity. Here's a person in a state that doesn't know me, I don't know them, and I can now turn this into a moment. Use your mouth. By the way, seek God in prayer for the people you're trying to reach. You are never taller than when you're on your knees. And the battle isn't fought in strength. You will never argue a person into the kingdom. God will open their heart. And since you don't have keys to anybody's heart, talk to Jesus. He's the one with the keys. By your hands. So I use eyes, ears, mouth. I use hands. Here's how I do it. Kill them with kindness. Serve them. People want to know why you're going to do stuff for them and you're not trying to get money out of it. Because in our world, nobody does nothing for anybody unless they get something. So here's what you do. You do it just because you can. It makes them nuts. I love this. I lived surrounded by Jewish people in Jerusalem. I used to do stuff for them all the time. It drove them crazy. They were like, can we pay you? No. Only your friendship, that's all I want. And I walk around town, I go, just only your friendship, only your friend. It drives them crazy, they don't know what to do with it. I know they're going home going, that guy, he's so much shit, I don't understand what his problem is. Now, the last one, arms. Listen, this sounds counter-Christian, it's not. Offer times where you bring unsaved people to believers that are getting along. One of those is not the Christian softball league. Don't bring them there. Nor Christians playing golf. Don't bring them there. They will hear vocabulary that shouldn't even come from a Christian. But when you have a group of friends who know Jesus, in our office in Jerusalem, we would hire one unsaved person until they were saved, and then we'd hire another one. And you gather, you know what it helps? It helps the Christians to act like Christians because somebody's watching. And it's a great thing. So show it through your eyes, your ears, your mouth, your hands, your arms. I have used my time, and I want to pray as you have. Father, I'm thankful for these young people. Wow. I don't think I would sit in a hot room and learn about religions of people far away. And I'm just really thankful that you have put in this room some hearts that are on fire for you with a hunger to change the world through the power of the Spirit, the Word of God, and the truth of the gospel. Here's my prayer, Father. Touch them. fan the flames through this conference so that they are ready to walk with you. Father, if I am yours, it means I am not my own. I'm bought with a price. Therefore, this day I would glorify my Father because I am his. In Jesus' name, amen.